Do you know that unsettling feeling that you are always the problem in your family? That suffocating certainty that no matter what happened at home, somehow the blame always ended up falling on your lap? Well, I need to tell you a truth that no one has dared to say until now. You probably weren't the problem. In fact, you were carefully chosen to carry on your shoulders all the emotional mess that your parents couldn't resolve. And the scariest part, they did it without even realizing it, repeating a destructive pattern that has been passed down from generation to generation like a cursed inheritance that no one asked to receive. Look, I'm going to be direct with you because this is too serious to beat around the bush. Well, everyone told you that honoring your parents was a sacred commandment, while the whole society shoved down your throat that story that family is everything and that blood is thicker than water. You grew up carrying a weight that should never have been yours. And the worst part, you probably spent your whole life thinking you deserved all that. That somehow you were flawed, problematic, the black sheep that tarnished the reputation of a perfect family. Spoiler, the family was never perfect, and the flaw was never yours. Let's start unwrapping this emotional bomb that was handed to you wrapped in a pretty ribbon called family love. Emotionally immature parents are like overgrown children trapped in adult bodies. They have the same responsibilities as any other parent, but they lack something fundamental: the ability to process their own emotions in a healthy way. Think about it. When a 5-year-old gets frustrated, they throw a tantrum, throw the toy away, blame everyone but themselves. It's normal. It's part of development. Now imagine that same behavior in a 40-year-old who should be raising another child. Scary, right? These parents operate in an automatic mode of emotional survival that they learned in their own childhood. You can bet your grandparents were probably emotionally immature too. And their parents before that. It's like that game of telephone, only instead of funny words being distorted, it's traumas being amplified and passed on. The difference is that nobody's laughing at the end of this game. Enter you, the perfect victim. When an emotionally immature parent looks at their children, they don't see complex human beings with their own needs and personality. They see extensions of themselves, tools to validate their existence, or worse, convenient targets to unload all the frustrations they've accumulated throughout their lives. And in this unhealthy scenario, there's always that one child who, for some specific reason, becomes the official recipient of all this toxicity. That child is you, the scapegoat. But how on earth were you chosen for this horrible role? Because, believe me, it wasn't by chance. There is a perverse logic behind it all. Sometimes you were chosen because you were too sensitive and reacted visibly when attacked, which gave your parents the distorted validation that you were actually problematic. Other times, it was because you were too similar to someone they hated or had unresolved issues with, like an ex-spouse, an estranged relative, or even themselves in that part of their personality that they despised. It may also have been because you simply dared to be different from what they expected, to have your own tastes, a unique personality, dreams that didn't fit the script they had written for your life before you were even born. I'll give you some concrete examples to make this make sense in practice. I knew someone who was the family scapegoat simply because they liked to read books. That's right, read. While their siblings were geared towards sports and more normal activities according to their parents, this child preferred to lock themselves in their room with a copy of The Little Prince or The Chronicles of Narnia. For the parents, that was a sign of weakness, of not fitting in, of being weird. The result? He became a joke. At every Sunday lunch, was negatively compared to his siblings, and grew up believing that having a rich inner world was a character flaw. Another case that stood out: a boy who was chosen as a scapegoat because he physically resembled his mother's father, with whom she had a terrible relationship. Every time she looked at her son, she saw her father and unconsciously unloaded decades of anger and resentment that she had never processed onto that innocent child. The boy grew up wondering why his mother was affectionate towards his siblings, but always had that cold look, that insurmountable distance towards him. The dynamic works more or less like this. Imagine a family as a system that needs to maintain balance, but this balance is completely false and unhealthy. In order not to face real problems like a failed marriage, professional frustrations, unresolved traumas, addictions, or serious psychological issues, the family unconsciously chooses someone to be the identified patient, the official problem. So every time tension rises, instead of actually solving the problem, everyone can simply point the finger at the scapegoat and say, "See, the problem is right there. It's his fault." It's brilliant in a psychopathically efficient way. Your parents fight all the time. Of course, it's because you stress them out with your bad grades. Your father drinks too much. Obviously, it's the disappointment of having a son like you. Your mother is unhappy. It's certainly because you're too much trouble. Do you notice how at no point does the responsibility fall on the real owners of the problems? And there's another perverse layer to this whole story. Usually, there's a favorite child, the golden child. This is everything you're not in your parents' eyes. He can do anything wrong and it will be justified, protected, treated with a benevolence you've never experienced. The comparison between you is constant and cruel. Why aren't you more like your brother? Look how responsible so-and-so is. Learn from her. This dynamic creates a toxic rivalry between siblings and ensures that you remain isolated without allies within your own family nucleus. The golden child also suffers, but in a different way. They grow up with absurd pressure to maintain this perfect image, living in constant fear of falling off the pedestal. But for you, the scapegoat, they represent everything you should be and never achieved. According to your parents' distorted narrative, now comes the part that really messes with your head. All this abuse was invisible to others. Do you know why? Because emotionally immature parents are masters at maintaining appearances. On the outside, everything was perfect. The family united, traditional values respected everyone, smiling in Christmas photos. But inside the house, within the four walls that witnessed the truth, you were constantly invalidated, criticized, humiliated, ignored. And when you tried to tell someone, no one believed you. But your parents seem so nice. You're exaggerating. Ungrateful child, complaining with a full belly. This collective gaslighting made you question your own sanity. You started to think that maybe you were making it up, that you were too sensitive, that you were interpreting everything wrong. But let me assure you of one thing. Your perception was absolutely correct. You didn't invent anything. What happened was real. It was abusive, and it had devastating consequences on your development. Let's talk about these consequences because it's important for you to recognize the patterns you probably carry to this day. Children raised as scapegoats develop a series of defense mechanisms and beliefs about themselves that continue to operate in adulthood, even when they have left that toxic environment. First, consequence. You probably have a deafening inner critical voice. That little voice that's always there telling you that you're not good enough, that you're going to ruin everything, that you don't deserve good things. Do you know where that voice comes from? Your parents. You internalized their constant criticism, and now it runs automatically in your brain like a cursed playlist that you can't turn off. It's like having an enemy living inside your own head, sabotaging every attempt at progress. Second consequence, absurd difficulty in setting limits. You grew up in an environment where your needs were constantly disregarded, where saying no was punished, where you had to swallow insults and still be grateful. As a result, in adulthood, you probably find yourself accepting abuse, submitting to toxic relationships, letting people walk all over you because somewhere deep down, you still believe you don't deserve better. Third consequence, you are a champion at taking the blame for things that aren't even your responsibility. Is someone upset? It must be something you did. Did a project at work go wrong? You definitely messed it up, even if your participation was minimal. Is your romantic partner in a bad mood? You're already mentally making a list of everything you might have done wrong. This hyper-responsibility is a direct legacy of being the scapegoat. Fourth consequence, attraction to relationships that repeat the family dynamic. It's scary, but very common. You probably find yourself attracted to emotionally unavailable, critical people who put you down. It's not because you're stupid or masochistic. It's because it's familiar. It's what your brain has learned to recognize as love or attention. Your nervous system has been programmed to respond to this type of treatment as if it were normal. So you unconsciously seek to recreate the same pattern in the hope that this time you can be good enough to be truly loved. Fifth consequence, paralyzing perfectionism or chronic self-sabotage. You oscillate between these two extremes. Either you compulsively strive to be perfect in everything, believing that this will finally prove your worth, or you purposefully sabotage yourself because deep down you believe you will fail anyway. So why try? Both strategies come from the same place, the deep belief that you're fundamentally inadequate. Look, it may seem like I'm painting a desperate picture, and in a way, it is a heavy scenario, but here comes the turning point. The part where things start to make sense, and you finally gain power over your own narrative. First essential step, recognize that you were a scapegoat. Call a spade, as the saying goes, while you remain in denial, saying it was just strict upbringing, that your parents did the best they could, that everyone has family problems. You remain trapped. The truth is, yes, your parents probably did the best they could considering their emotional immaturity, but that doesn't negate the fact that they hurt you deeply. These two things can be true at the same time. Second step, understand that it wasn't your fault. I'll repeat it because it needs to sink in. It wasn't your fault. You were a child. Children are not responsible for regulating the emotions of the adults around them. You didn't ask to be born. You didn't choose that family. You didn't have the tools to defend yourself. What they did to you was unfair. Period. Third step, process the anger. And look, you are allowed to feel anger. In fact, you need to feel anger. For years, you probably swallowed this feeling because showing anger only worsened your situation at home. But now, as an adult and away from that environment or working to get out of it, anger is your ally. It shows you that your boundaries were violated, that you were wronged. Seek out a therapist specializing in family trauma, preferably someone who understands narcissistic dynamics and dysfunctional families. Some books that can help you immensely on this journey. Parents Who Hate by Susan Forward. Although the Portuguese title is somewhat dramatic, it's excellent for understanding these dynamics. Toxic Parents. In the original, another fundamental one is Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson, which maps exactly this issue of emotional immaturity. Fourth step, establish boundaries, which may include reducing or cutting off contact with your family of origin. I know this is controversial, that everyone will judge you, that you yourself will feel guilty. But sometimes, to truly heal, you need to distance yourself from the source of toxicity. This doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you someone who finally chose their own mental health. Fifth step, rebuild your self-image. This takes time, but it's possible. You need to actively question every negative automatic thought about yourself. Where did this belief come from? Is it really true, or is it your parents' voice echoing? Start small. Identify a quality you value in yourself. Maybe it's your empathy, your creativity, your resilience. For having survived all of this, anchor yourself in these real qualities. Sixth step, build a chosen family. True friends, healthy romantic partners, mentors, communities that genuinely support you. These people exist, even if your family experience has convinced you otherwise. Your blood family gave you a script for how you don't deserve to be treated. Now use that knowledge in reverse. Anyone who treats you like your parents treated you doesn't deserve a place in your life. There's a powerful tool I want to share with you. The Reparenting Journal. Every night, before bed, write a short letter to yourself as if you were the parent you deserved to have. Start like this. Dear your name, today I saw how you ... double quotes, and list things you did well, however small. You were patient with that difficult person at work. You ate right, even though you were stressed. You had the courage to express your opinion. Sounds silly, but over time, you begin to develop that nourishing inner voice that you lacked in childhood. Another valuable technique is working with your inner child. Visualize yourself at the age when you suffered most from being the scapegoat. Maybe you were 7, 10, 13 years old. Imagine entering that specific scene where you were being wronged, and as the adult you are today, intervening. Protect that child. Take them out of there. Say the words they needed to hear. It's not your fault. You don't deserve this. I'm going to protect you now. Do this regularly, and you will feel a genuine change in the way you relate to yourself. Now, I need to give you an important warning. The healing process is not linear. There will be days when you will feel empowered, strong, free. And there will be days when you will go back to feeling like that helpless child, believing all the lies you are told. This is normal. Healing from complex trauma is like that. 2 steps forward, 1 is stepping back. The important thing is to remain committed to the process. You also need to be prepared for resistance. When you start setting boundaries with your family of origin, when you stop accepting the role of scapegoat, the system will panic. Remember, I said you had a role within that unhealthy dynamic. When you step out of that role, the family needs to reorganize, and they won't like it. Expect accusations of being insensitive, selfish, of having changed for the worse, of being influenced by bad company or foreign therapy that pits son against father. Stand firm. Their disapproval is not an indicator that you are doing something wrong. On the contrary, it usually means that you are finally doing something very right. One last thing I need to tell you about this healing journey at You Saw Me point. You will need to come to terms with the possibility of never receiving the apology you deserve. Emotionally immature parents rarely manage to see the damage they've caused, let alone admit it and genuinely ask for forgiveness. You'll probably never hear, "I'm sorry for using you as a scapegoat. I recognize that I hurt you deeply, and it was unfair." This hurts like hell because we want that recognition. We want that validation that, yes, what we experienced was real and it was wrong. But you can't condition your healing on their behavior. You need to find ways to validate yourself, even without their admission. That doesn't mean you have to forgive, by the way. You know, that talk about forgiveness being liberating and necessary to move on? It's a half-truth, forced Forgiveness. Forgiveness because society says you should. Forgiveness while the pain is still open and throbbing. That kind of forgiveness doesn't heal anything. It just sweeps the dirt under the rug. What you need is to fully process the pain, the anger, the injustice. If after this whole process you genuinely feel that you want to forgive, great. If you don't feel it, that's okay too. Forgiveness isn't mandatory for healing. Indifference, emotional detachment, acceptance that those people are limited, all of that can give you peace without necessarily involving forgiveness. So tell me something. After everything you've read so far, how's your heart? Did you recognize any patterns? Did you feel that tightness in your chest that comes when a hidden truth finally sees the light of day? If you felt that, my friend, it's because this content's touched on something real in your story. Now, the burning question. What are you going to do with this information? Because look, knowledge without action is just intellectual entertainment. You can read all this, nod your head in agreement, find it interesting, and continue living exactly the same way. Carrying the same weight, believing the same lies about yourself. Or you can decide that enough is enough, that this is the last generation that will suffer from this pattern, that the cycle of dysfunction ends here with you. Watuel, ETB. Are you going to continue being the scapegoat now in your own life, in your own relationships, in the internal dialogue you have with yourself? Or are you going to have the courage to stand up, dust off this whole story, and start building a new narrative where you are the protagonist, not the convenient victim of other people's problems? Because I'm going to tell you a secret. The greatest revenge you can have against everything they did to you is not confronting your parents. It's not making them see their mistake. It's not proving to the whole family that you were always right. The greatest revenge is living well. It's building a life so rich, so full of true love and genuine achievements that that version of you that was the scapegoat becomes just a distant chapter in a much bigger story. It's you looking in the mirror in a few years and recognizing someone who, against all odds, managed to become an integral, functional person, capable of loving and being loved in a healthy way. And look, this isn't shallow motivational talk. It's real. I've seen it happen. I've met people who came from families as dysfunctional as I imagine yours to be, and who are now living incredible lives. Not perfect lives, because a perfect life doesn't exist, but lives where they finally feel worthy of occupying space, of having a voice, of existing without having to apologize for it. You have everything you need to be one of those people. In fact, you already have something that many people never develop. Awareness, the simple fact of being here, consuming this content, seeking to understand the patterns of your story, already puts you miles ahead of where you were. The next step is to transform that awareness into concrete change. So here's my challenge for you. In the next 7 days, do one small thing that the scapegoat version of you would never have been allowed or had the courage to do. Buy that book you want to read, but always think you don't deserve to spend money on yourself. Say no to someone who has always exploited you emotionally. Praise yourself out loud in front of the mirror. Write a list of your real qualities without minimizing or adding buts to each one. It starts small, but it starts, and then tell me in the comments below what you did. I want to know how it went, if it was difficult, if you felt anything changing. This channel isn't just for you to passively consume content. It's a community of people who are on this healing journey together. Your experiences matter. Your story matters. And sharing it can be the starting point for the transformation you so desperately need. While you're at it, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because this is just the beginning. We're going to delve much deeper into these issues of toxic family dynamics, narcissism, complex trauma, rebuilding self-esteem, everything you need to finally break free from these invisible chains that bind you to the past. There's so much important stuff for us to talk about, so much liberating knowledge to share.